Listen. Listen to the sound of the past. Imagine the blinding artificial light of a colossal stadium, a cathedral of glass and steel built for a single purpose, to bear witness. Imagine the deafening, earth-shaking roar of 100,000 voices rising as one, echoing against the curved architecture. And at the very center of it all, standing on the manicured dirt of the pristine battlefield, a tiny Charmander looks up at the brightly lit stands. Its tail flame burns with a bright, cheerful, harmless orange. It looks completely safe. It looks full of an innocent pride. It is standing in the center of a world built entirely to watch it shine, surrounded by a species that promised to protect it forever. That is a memory. It is a phantom echo of a glory that has long since turned to dust. The cheering is abruptly choked out. It is swallowed entirely by a howling, freezing wind. The stadium lights do not just turn off, they shatter, their glass raining down into the darkness. A century has passed since that night. The once glorious arena is no longer a place of triumph. It is a moss-covered crater. The manicured battlefield is flooded with dark, stagnant water. Thick vines have burst through the concrete floor, twisting their way up the rusting metal girders, like fingers dragging the architecture back down into the earth. From the deep, pitch-black shadows of the shattered spectator stands, a colossal silhouette steps forward. This is a Charizard, but it is entirely unlike the pristine, polished champions of our past. It is massive, heavy with the weight of a century of absolute wildness. It is covered in rough, jagged scales that look like hardened volcanic rock. Deep, pale scars crisscross its chest and tear through the membranes of its vast wings. It steps forward into a pale shaft of moonlight. It unleashes a roar that vibrates the very foundation of the shattered concrete and breathes a massive, blinding stream of white fire that burns away the encroaching mist. The glory of the past is dead. It has been buried beneath 100 years of soil, and it has made way for the tyrant of the present. Look closely at the curved, crumbling concrete walls of the arena's inner concourse. The stone is cracked and weeping with dark green moss. But beneath the overgrowth, there are distinct, horrifying markings etched permanently into the architecture. They are black, scorched silhouettes of human figures. These are the fossilized shadows of an audience. When the extinction event occurred, a heat so sudden and immense washed over this place that it permanently burned the outlines of the spectators into the walls. The massive Charizard walks slowly past these shadows. Its heavy footsteps shake the dust from the ceiling. It does not look at them. It does not recognize them. It is completely oblivious to the outlines of the very people its ancestors once fought and bled for. And across the silent oceans, the earth has swallowed the rest of our memory. Imagine a serene, flooded megalopolis. Colossal skyscrapers jut out of the teal, crystal-clear water like weathered tombstones, their shattered windows choked with hanging, lush green gardens. Beneath the surface of the water, resting in the drowned city square, lies a giant, gold-plated statue of a Charizard. It was once a monument to a past champion, a symbol of human mastery over nature. Now it has become a massive, bioluminescent coral reef. Fish dart through its hollow golden eyes. Above the water, the dark silhouette of a real Charizard glides by silently against the clouds, its shadow passes briefly over the golden face of the statue below, entirely disconnected from the legacy carved by human hands. I have drifted through this sunken empire for 100 years, and in all that time, the simplest question remains unanswered. Where did everyone go? Welcome back to the world we left behind. In the silence of these ruins, let the dust reveal what became of a creature that once lived in our hands. When humanity first vanished, the end did not come with fire or fury. We simply disappeared in a single, quiet night. But for the Charizards left behind, they did not immediately turn feral. They did not understand the permanence of our absence. They did not comprehend what an extinction event was. They only understood loyalty, and so they waited. The diegetic evidence of this tragedy is scattered across the drowned metropolis, painting a heartbreaking picture of those first few agonizing years. Look down a dark, overgrown hallway of what used to be a luxury human residence. The wallpaper is peeling, and the floorboards have rotted into soil. At the end of the hall is a heavy, reinforced steel door, rusted completely shut. Lying neatly in a row on the mossy floor, directly in front of the door, are the perfectly preserved, bleached, skeletal remains of several small creatures. Examining the skulls reveals them as Rattata and Pidgey. These were not left here by chance. These were gifts. For months, perhaps years, a creature capable of melting boulders spent its days delicately hunting the smallest of prey. It brought these offerings back to the threshold of its home, laying them out in the quiet, desperate hope of trading them for the sound of a voice, for a hand to finally push open the door. But the doors never opened. The wait was exhausting. Inside the ruins of grand estates, the roofs have completely caved in, allowing the rain and sunlight to reclaim the interiors. But upon the oversized, custom-built luxury beds, or the massive torn sofas in the living rooms, something peculiar remains. The thick, rusted springs and rotten fabric are permanently pressed into massive, perfect circular depressions. These are the heavy traces of giant dragons attempting to curl up and sleep in the exact spots they always had. They grew heavier, wilder, more desperate, returning to these fragile pieces of furniture night after night. They tried to fit their growing, untamed bodies into the shrinking spaces of their domesticated past, until the roofs finally collapsed under the weight of their sorrow. They are haunted by our ghosts. Imagine a massive Charizard resting in the ruins of a collapsed skyscraper. Suddenly, it wakes up in a sheer, unadulterated panic in the middle of the dead night. It startles, its eyes wide, looking around in frantic confusion. The wind, through the rusted steel crevices of the broken elevator shafts. It is a sharp, piercing sound, a sound accidentally identical to its former trainer's command whistle. It stands in the cold, its chest heaving, waiting for an order that never comes. Even though the skies were wide open and the cages were broken, the first generations of Charizard were psychologically trapped. They suffered from a devastating terrarium syndrome. Despite having wings powerful enough to carry them across continents, they flew in repetitive, fixed, circular flight paths. They traced invisible boundaries in the sky that never exceeded the radius of their old city limits. They were terrified to cross the invisible lines programmed into their minds by humans. They were prisoners of a cage that no longer existed. But the painful transition was inevitable. The synthetic poke food supply chain collapsed into dust almost immediately. Absolute hunger set in. Hunger is a brutal teacher. It forced creatures accustomed to soft, processed meals to learn the violent art of tearing into fresh, struggling prey. The initial bewilderment, the hesitation of a domesticated animal, slowly gave way to the brutal, bloody awakening of primal instincts. Yet even as they became killers, they could not let go entirely. Deep in the overgrown forests, far from the city centers, burnt clearings are carved into the wood. The trees are not just burned, they are scorched in perfectly geometric lines. A lone Charizard still visits these clearings. It repeats muscle memory drills, a flamethrower or a fire spin against a charred tree stump. It stands at the exact distance required by tournament rules. It performs these attacks not to hunt and not to defend itself. It performs them like a religious ritual to summon its trainer, a physical prayer to an empty sky, even though no one is left to give the command. But these ruins haven't told their whole story yet. There were no more Pokémon centers. There were no more healing machines emitting their gentle electronic chimes. There were no more potions to spray on a wound after a difficult battle. The soft safety nets of domestication were completely gone. In this new, unforgiving world, a scraped knee or a torn wing could mean a slow, agonizing death. Only the most brutal, resilient individuals survived the first few decades. And to survive, an accelerated, violent biological regression took hold. Their skin changed. The smooth, vibrant orange hides that were once brushed and polished for beauty contests faded. They shed the softer traits bred into them by human trainers. To withstand the savage, untamed bites of nature, they developed a thick, rough armor. Their scales hardened, turning into jagged plates that look and feel like black obsidian. This volcanic armor allows them to shrug off the crushing jaws of other predators, but it stripped away the warmth they once possessed. The very nature of their fire changed. From the original, warm orange flame that could safely toast a berry, they began to adapt to the poisoned earth. They absorbed heavy metals and toxic chemicals from the abandoned industrial zones and shattered nuclear reactors. This diet of poison turned their tail flames icy blue, or sometimes a blinding, searing white. This new fire burns with a terrifying, unnatural heat. A heat capable of melting the structural steel of our remaining monuments. Without human care for grooming, they had to find a new way to clean themselves. The ash bathing ritual was born. Charizards rid themselves of prehistoric parasites by flying directly into active volcanic vents. They roll violently in high-temperature volcanic ash. This superheated ash fuses directly with their obsidian scales, gradually forming a permanent thermal insulating armor. They wear the very earth as a shield. Evolution was once a badge of glory. It was celebrated with flashing lights and cheering crowds. But in the silence, evolution became a desperate, violent matter of life and death. The forced catalyst of survival is written in their bones. Scattered, skeletal remains of starving Charmeleons lie near the treacherous edges of high-heat magma streams. When pushed to the absolute brink of starvation, when their bodies could no longer sustain them, they threw themselves into the molten rock. They used the sheer, catastrophic primal energy of the magma to force their bodies to evolve into Charizard, leaving behind brutally charred, hollowed out, shed skins on the rocks. It was an agonizing rebirth. The ones who survived this crucible reshaped the entire ecosystem. They became the undisputed apex predators of this ruined world. The hunting scenes are both majestic and terrifying. Massive, thundering herds of Tauros and Bufalon migrate across the cracked, overgrown interstate highways. The earth trembles beneath their hooves, but the mere shadow of a Charizard sweeping over the asphalt is enough to send the entire massive herd into a blind, stampeding panic. Yet, even in this reign of terror, a delicate symbiosis emerged in the ash. Look at the base of the Charizard's towering volcanic nests. Swarms of Slugma and Macargo gather in the hundreds. They do not fear the dragons. They scavenge the charred, massive leftovers of the Charizard's prey. They survive entirely on the massive ambient heat radiating from the sleeping titans. And the apex predators allow them to stay. They do not incinerate them, because in the freezing, brutal post-apocalyptic winters, the presence of this living, crawling magma acts as a natural incubator. The Slugma help keep the Charizard eggs warm. The creatures here didn't just inherit our technology, they repurposed the very laws of nature. No one kept records once records stopped mattering, but the rust and the ash remember, in their own quiet way. With humanity removed from the equation, the locks on the earth were broken. Ancient creatures, terrors that had been driven deep underground or suppressed by human expansion, awakened from their long slumber. The sky did not belong to Charizard alone. Territorial wars of apocalyptic proportions raged across the broken continents. One does not need a history book to understand these wars. Their histories are told entirely through the massive scars left on the ruins of our civilization. Look at the skyline of this drowned metropolis. There is a massive, modern glass skyscraper that has been completely sliced in half. The top 30 floors are sheared off, lying in ruins in the flooded streets below. Along the remaining jagged edge of the building, massive, deep claw marks gouge the reinforced steel. These are the violent signatures of life or death aerial dogfights. They are the remnants of clashes between Charizard and Aerodactyl, ancient, resurrected terrors of the prehistoric sky. The apex predators tore the modern world apart to claim their thrones. There are no more Pokédexes to catalog them. There are no more national borders to contain them. The world is divided purely by domains of ancient, unchecked power. Tyranitar rules the shattered earth, its massive footsteps causing localized earthquakes that topple remaining human structures. Gyarados dominates the crushing depths of the dark rising seas, turning the oceans into a graveyard of sunken ships and bones. And Charizard claims the highest, most treacherous peaks of the old civilization. Brutal, unforgiving laws of survival replaced the sanitized, regulated rules of the Pokémon League. But even tyrants must eventually fall. And when they do, they fall with the tragic dignity of kings. Deep inside a dormant, overgrown volcano crater, hidden from the wind and the rain, lies a silent, hidden valley. The floor of this valley is covered entirely in bleached white bones. Massive skulls with jagged horns stare up at the sky. This is the dragon's graveyard. It is a sacred place, When an old, heavily scarred Charizard knows its end is near, when its wings can no longer catch the thermal updrafts, and its icy blue flame begins to sputter and fade into a pale yellow, it exiles itself. It leaves its nest, flies to this hidden valley, and lands among the bones of its ancestors. It takes its last breath in absolute silence. Even in death, they maintain the immense pride of a king. By dying here, surrounded by their own kind in an impenetrable fortress of rock, they refuse to let any lesser scavengers defile their final moments. They've claimed not just the mountains, but the very atmosphere itself. Ecological space in this new world is divided strictly vertically. Charizard has established a ruthless, unbreakable law. No giant bird species is allowed to fly higher than them. Flocks of massive Pidgeot and Fearow dominate the lower clouds, weaving through the ruined skyscrapers. But they never cross the invisible threshold into the upper atmosphere. If they do, they are instantly, mercilessly burned from the sky. The lower clouds belong to the birds, but the absolute, freezing silence of the stratosphere, the place closest to the stars, looking down on the curvature of a ruined earth, is the exclusive domain of the fire dragons. Look closer, because the truth is buried beneath this dust. And across the silent oceans, a different kind of legacy is being passed down in the shadows of the high towers. When evolution is considered in the wild, it is naturally linked to the transmission of physical strength. It is easy to imagine the inheritance of sharper claws, of thicker scales, of wider wingspans meant to conquer the brutal, unpredictable winds of a ruined earth. Survival is assumed to be purely a biological imperative, but in the high, hidden nests of these ancient kings, something else entirely is being inherited. It is something invisible, yet infinitely heavier than the obsidian armor they wear. They are passing down a genetic melancholy. Observe the ancient, heavily scarred Charizards in their towering sanctuaries. They do not merely teach their young how to fly against the gale force winds. They do not only teach them how to tear the meat from the bones of a migrating Tauros. They teach them how to grieve for a world they never knew. In the old world, the world built with steel and electricity, sterile, humming machines were used to keep Pokémon eggs warm. They were placed in perfect, climate-controlled incubators behind thick, reinforced glass, bathed in the soft glow of artificial light. It was efficient. It was safe. But it was entirely removed from nature. Here, in the biting, unforgiving wind of the ruined skyscrapers, a quiet, sacred ritual has replaced those forgotten machines. It is the fire relay. When a Charmander hatches from its thick, leathery shell, it is violently shivering. It is born into a freezing, desolate world that does not welcome it. The mother Charizard leans down. She is a massive, terrifying creature, capable of melting a steel bank vault with a single breath. Yet in this moment, she is infinitely gentle. She uses her heavy, jagged jaws to delicately pass a single, flickering ember of her own flame to the tip of the newborn's tail. That fragile new life receives a flame that has burned through the darkest transition of history. It is a fire mixed with the literal ashes of a collapsed civilization. They are quite literally born into the embers of a funeral pyre, inheriting the warmth of a world they will never get to see. But it is what surrounds these nests that reveals the true depth of their tragedy. Look closer, because the truth is buried beneath this dust. Atop the highest crumbling skyscrapers, where the wind howls relentlessly through the shattered glass, they build their colossal nests. You might expect an apex predator of this magnitude to build its home from the bones of its conquered prey, or from the massive, uprooted trunks of ancient trees dragged from the overgrown valleys below. But they do not. Look carefully at the materials they painstakingly gather from the drowned cities. They line their nests with the rusted, luminescent metal of old traffic signs, perfectly arranging the reflective surfaces to catch the morning sun. They gather shimmering, fragile optical discs, CDs and DVDs that have long since lost their data, piling them in glittering mounds that reflect the pale moonlight. They hoard the cracked, metallic casings of human communication devices, black glass mirrors that have not held a charge or reflected a human face in a century. And, most reverently of all, they scour the deepest, most dangerous and unstable ruins to find tiny, beautifully crafted metal trinkets, small metal stars, tiny sculpted teardrops, jagged little lightning bolts made of polished brass and silver, gym badges. To humanity, they were tokens of a game. They were souvenirs of a sporting event. To them, they are holy relics. Why do they hoard these lifeless fragments of human history? Why does a creature of such immense power care for a piece of rusted tin? There are questions even time cannot answer, but their desperation to remember is heartbreaking. These metal trinkets are arranged into perfect concentric circles inside their nests. They are pushed around with massive, terrifying claws, handled with the delicate care of a monk tending to a sand garden. They are trying to rebuild the shrines of their forgotten gods. The psychological toll of our absence manifests in ways that defy pure biology. To lull their restless young to sleep during the terrifying, violent thunderstorms of this new world, old, battle-scarred Charizards do something incredible and deeply tragic. When the lightning flashes and a frightened Charmander whimpers in the dark, the mother does not simply wrap it in her leathery wings. Instead, she drags her heavy obsidian claws against a hollow, rusted steel pillar of the skyscraper. She strikes the metal in a highly deliberate, repetitive rhythm. 2 short, ringing notes, followed by a longer, echoing hum. She does it again and again. It is a desperate, biological biomimicry of the machine. She is trying to perfectly recreate the electronic healing chime of a Pokémon Center, a comforting sound that hasn't existed since the power grid failed 100 years ago. Sometimes, they snap their massive jaws together in a specific, sharp rhythm when they want their young to feel secure, perfectly mimicking the mechanical click of a Pokeball locking shut. They use their destructive, terrifying biological bodies to artificially recreate a sense of synthetic safety that vanished. They are a species trapped between the wild nature they have conquered and the domestic ghost that still haunts their blood. This is the absolute loneliness of the apex. They possess unrivaled, cataclysmic power. There is no species left on this earth that dares challenge them. The skies belong to them. The highest peaks belong to them. Yet this absolute, unchecked supremacy is accompanied by a profound, hollow emptiness. A colossal, adult Charizard on a high rocky outcrop overlooking a drowned city will sit without moving for hours. It does not hunt, even as a flock of wild Pidgeot flies carelessly below. It does not sleep. It simply sits on its haunches and stares endlessly at the dead, grey horizon. Its ears twitch independently, swiveling toward the silence. It is listening. It is listening for the screech of a commuter train whistle on broken, rusted tracks. It is listening for the familiar, heavy crunch of a trainer's footsteps on the gravel path. Footsteps that will never arrive. They are the undisputed kings of a silent empire, sitting on thrones of ash and rusted steel, forever waiting for a kingmaker who is never coming back. We built this world, but something else inherited its patience. Chapter 5. The Final Question. And that is all that remains. As the sun sets on this drowned metropolis, the sky turns a bruised, violent purple, and then fades into a deep, impenetrable black. The wind finally dies down, and a prolonged, heavy silence falls over the ruins of human ambition. The massive silhouette of the Charizard blends seamlessly into the encroaching night, becoming one with the dark peaks of the broken skyscrapers. Its tail flame is the only source of warmth, the only flickering, living light in a dead city that once housed millions. It stands alone against the absolute dark, a living torch in a graveyard of concrete. Let us descend. Look down, far below the towering nesting grounds, past the shattered glass and the weeping vines, to the very base of the stone monument where the dragon is currently perched. Hidden entirely beneath a century of thick, suffocating moss, creeping ivy, and the relentless accumulation of volcanic dust, there is an inscription left by humanity. The stone is carved deeply with letters that have miraculously withstood the acid rain and the howling winds of time. The carving reads, simply, "To our eternal partners." As the dragon shifts in its sleep high above, a stray, glowing ember from its tail falls slowly through the darkness. For a brief, beautiful second, it lands near the base of the monument, casting a warm, amber glow that accidentally illuminates the carved letters. But the majestic creature sleeping above cannot read. It does not know what those symbols mean. It fiercely protects a love letter it will never understand. It guards a promise of eternity that was broken by simply disappearing into the night. If one could float upward right now and look closely into the dragon's exhausted amber eyes as it dreams, something extraordinary is revealed. Caught in the flickering, warm light of its own tail fire, the reflection in its dark pupil is not the wild, overgrown ruins of the present. For a fleeting second, the reflection is a memory illusion. It is a ghost trapped deep within their genetic code, projecting outward into the night. In that eye, there are no vines and rusted steel. The reflection reveals the flashing, colorful neon lights of a prosperous, bustling city street. It shows the gleaming, polished floors of a tournament stadium. And, just for a moment, it reflects the silhouette of an outstretched human hand, waiting to be taken. Will they, hundreds of years from now, when the oceans recede and their tail flames finally begin to sputter and burn out, still remember why they protect these lifeless pieces of metal? Will they still build their nests out of stop signs and shattered smartphones? Or are they just waiting, frozen in evolutionary sorrow, for a simple return command that no one is left alive to utter? What do you think really happened here? Leave your theory below. I'll pin the best one. I will keep searching the silence. I'll see you in the next ruin.